Hey everybody, welcome to episode 93 of the podcast. In today's episode, I talk with Jim
Nick
Wideman,
Blevins Family Ministry
who I
Podcast.
love. He's such a
Our goal is to help you
mentor
maximize your
and
church's potential.
To me,
You'll
and
hear
to
from
many
top
of you,
leaders
I'm
in
sure.
children's,
And so
student,
Jim's back
and
on the
family
podcast.
ministry
He
about
was
the principles
on
and
early
practices
on
they
in
use.
the podcast, and he's
Now
back.
here's your host,
We're talking
Nick
about a
Blevins.
topic that's going to be a book that he's working on that I'll release this fall, and it's all about how we think. It's probably true that in ministry world, we're guilty of not thinking, oftentimes just repeating what we've always done or copy pasting something from somewhere else. So Jim talks about how we can think differently, why it's important to think differently. How can we plan for that? What does that look like practically? So you're going to love this conversation with Jim. It's always a fun time with Jim, and you know, he's just got so much wisdom and so much to share. I know you're going to love it regardless of what role you serve in. As usual, we'll have any links and documents, resources, anything like that in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 93. But that's all I have for now. Let's jump into my conversation with Jim Wideman about how to think differently. Well, it's my pleasure to have my friend and mentor, Jim Wideman, back on the podcast. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, it is great to be back, Nick. You know, anytime you get to do something again, it's even better than the first time.
Let's hope so. You might be better than the first time. I could regress. You never know.
Well,
We'll find out.
No. It's great to be on the podcast again. I everywhere I go, I just hear so many good things about the podcast and what you're doing with your coaching groups and how blessed people are. And man, I'm just so proud of you and so thankful that you're my friend. And it's just an honor to be back on the podcast again.
Man, the honor's all mine. And I appreciate you, Jim. You know, I've learned so much from you, and what you do to serve other church leaders, just amazing. And I'm grateful you make time for us to talk with us and share. But before we jump in to the topic we're going to talk about, I'd love to hear, and I think everyone would love to hear, like an update on how Next Gen Staff Solutions is going, if somebody's not familiar with it.
Yeah, I laugh and tell people all the time, Jim Wideman Ministries is a whole bunch of full-time jobs all rolled into one. And Next Gen Staff Solutions is our staffing company that was started with Orange. We're an Orange partner, and just saw a need to try to get some Orange-thinking churches and Orange-thinking leaders together. And that's probably one of the number one questions that Reggie and I was asked on Orange Tour. We'd go somewhere, and it seems like we'd always get there a little early and go to lunch with pastors, and they'd say, you know, do you know somebody that's looking? And Reggie would just look at me and say, find them somebody. And we're still finding somebody. And it's just amazing. From one year to next, our business tripled after the first year. It's just been so fun. And the Lord, you know, if the Lord doesn't build a house, you labor in vain. And it's just so funny. You know, people get all stressed out, and they'll call and say, I'm looking for a particular church in a particular place. And I'll say, I don't know of one. And then 2 days later, somebody calls me, and we get this church, and I know exactly who the first people I'm going to call. And, you know, it's like anything else. The more things on the a la carte list, you know, there's always those folks who order off the main menu, and then there's other people that want, you know, hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, you know, don't do this, put the sauce on the side. And churches are the same way. And, you know, sometimes they have so many requests from everything, but if they want somebody that's left or right-handed. And the more things that are on that a la carte list, you know, the longer it takes to find somebody. But it's been fun that we've been able to find them. And, you know, I can't imagine not loving what you get to do. And, you know, I've dreamed my whole life of having the problems that I have. And they're not really problems. They're just wonderful challenges that such an honor to serve. And, you know, what a dream come true to be able to work with the Orange folks. And, you know, I've always felt like Orange was a family, but the more I work with them, the more I know they're a family. And it's just not just family ministry. And so I'm so blessed. And the coaching's going good. I'm on my way to Budapest to speak to children's and family ministry leaders from 16 different countries in Europe, and so excited about that opportunity. Last week, 5 conferences opened up to me. And so it was a good week last week. So, life is
almost anywhere somebody goes to a children's or family ministry conference this year, they can see you, which is great.
Well, and that's really good too, because that just helps next gen too. So,
that's true.
You speak, and then, are you happy where you are? And it's just you just start the whole process. So I know a great church is looking for a great thinker like you. So it's fun. So awesome. What a blessing.
I imagine you run into this all the time, because I see it too, where they're looking to hire a staff position. We have an email right like this going around right now with one of our church plants that we help with. And, they need the position. They would love to use a search firm, but they balk at the money, which you guys are very affordable compared to most. But I'm always like, hey, you go right ahead and go try it by yourself.
Here, Nick, that's cool that if you use Orange products, you get $1,000 off. And so,
how much is it off?
$1,000, just for using Orange. And
that's great.
So it's just because it's easier for us to fill an Orange thinking church with an Orange leader.
That makes sense, because there's a lot of philosophical stuff you agree on.
Yeah. So it's just been so fun.
I just always say, go ahead. If you're going to try to search for that yourself, go right ahead. But when you get frustrated, go ahead and reach out, because you probably will, and it's going to take you time. And there's money, but man, you save so much and all that stuff.
We're working on a brand new package too that we're going to be able to just use the job board, but also include some Facebook ads and other things built in to that. And we're using more and more Facebook marketing. And, you just hang out with enough young people, they'll show you how to work all this electronic stuff.
That's right. And
so, me, I fight to sit at the kids' table. So, there's not a day goes by that somebody doesn't tell me about a new app or a new gadget or gizmo. And that's one of the great things about sitting at the kids' table.
Yeah, you know more than most kids when it comes to technology, so you could definitely school most of them. So we're going to talk about something you've been thinking about a lot, something you're writing a book on, and it's just the idea of thinking different. So before we jump in and kind of dig around in there, what led you to this? Why did it come up? Why is it an issue? It's not exactly like another children's ministry book. So what led you to it?
Well, it's just crazy. It seems like everybody, regardless of the ministry that I'm running into, they want this magic pill. And the magic pill doesn't exist. It's a process. And that process comes from our thinking. And there was, I know this summer I found myself, I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Nashville, but people from Murfreesboro, they don't look at it as a suburb. It's
they're like, nope, we're different.
Old town, and it's real cool. There's a square downtown, and it has a courthouse with a clock tower like Back to the Future, and it's one of 7 working courthouses that has been in existence from before the Civil War to now, never shut down, and it's just way cool. And on Saturday mornings, there's all these farm to market folks that are there, and it's just one of the coolest things in the world. And I was sitting there just looking at all these people that were there, and it's crazy. After we left the farmers market, my wife and I, the Sprouts, the health food store that she wants to go to, is kind of on the other side of town. So while we were already halfway there, we went. And so I just kind of went from this looking at all these fresh fruits and vegetables and all this meat and raw honey and all this stuff. And then I went to the grocery store and looked at all this frozen and canned stuff. And I felt like the Lord just kind of asked me, why do you want to give things? Why do you want to give away fruit from another season rather than give fruit from this season? And I started looking at that and walking through the demand fresh stuff rather than old stuff. And, I'd gotten in the habit, Nick, like everybody else. I'd send people a list of things that I speak on, and most of it was all stuff that I'd spoke on before. And I know with you, there's times I'll just pull out 5 or 6 notes. When we were working on our workshop last year, I just start sending you workshop notes of all these things that I've spent at. And I realized that that's just canned fruits and vegetables. That's just something had to be added. A picture was changed or something to keep it alive. But it wasn't as good as something from this season. And so as I started realizing that how we think really affects who we are and what we do and the outcomes that we have, I started realizing that I needed to rethink ministry. And, I'm thankful for the fruit that I've had in past seasons. I'm thankful for all that stuff. But what's Jesus say? What's the Lord saying to me now? How can I help people now? And I've just gotten to the place where I'm writing everything new. I'm using brand new graphics and brand new illustrations. I'm meeting with a group of 14 to 25-year-olds once a month and running all my illustrations by them and asking, do you even know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question once they get that young.
Yeah, because, things that you think are recent, aren't recent. And it's funny, when Mean Girls turned 20, I realized that things that I thought was current were not. And it's just amazing to me how, we get in this mindset. And, I'll give you an example of one. Everybody kept asking me when I was going to retire. When are you going to slow down? When are you going to not work so hard? And, when you start reading the Bible, you realize that when the Lord was through with somebody, he took them to heaven. They didn't necessarily go, and it's fun to, it's fun to go hang out at my cabin. It's fun to go take pictures. I have a lot of hobbies, as you know, and I have fun at all of them. I've been working on that bucket list for several years now. And the crazy thing is I live such a fun life. It's hard to find things to add to the bucket list because I've already done great things.
Yeah.
But it's, there's nothing wrong with that stuff. But at the same time, you start looking at Scripture and, I look at Psalm 92 and, it says in verse 12, the righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bear fruit in old age, and they shall be fresh and flourishing. And one translation says that they're going to be green and bear much fruit. And the bottom line is that's not how, we think about older people. That's not how older people think. And I realized, years ago, I didn't just want to hang out with old thinking people. I wanted to hang out with younger people and sought out people like you and Kenny and all kind of folks. And even now, finding younger folks than you guys and hanging out with those folks, trying to see how they think and what I can learn from that. And again, all a stronghold is believing wrong information. And that whole idea that, when you get older, you've got to stay current. But I can stand on the word saying that I can bear much fruit. But the important thing is I do what I need to do to stay current so that I can. And so that's kind of where I've been living and where I've been imagining things. And, it's so funny. One of the things I hear people all the time, a question that I was asked for years, and it's a question what I'm even asked now, and that's, what are you thinking? And, the truth of the matter is so many times we don't even think. And we don't think it through. We don't even make appointments to think or to get our thinking the way that it needs to be. So that's kind of what I'm writing this book about, and kind of thinking different according to God's word about yourself, about your family, about your home, Nick, you've seen it. You've seen so many guys that they're in the ministry, but yet they don't take care of their soul. They don't take care of their health. They don't take care of all these things. Yet, you can't complete what God has for you if you're dead.
Yep. Yeah.
I had to talk to somebody the other day, and I said, God created work, but he also created rest. And he created rest just as much as work. And why don't I told him about an app that right there on his iPhone that could help set him a bedtime. And I said, dude, you need to start going to bed and just quit working all the time. And so if we're going to see different outcomes in our ministry and our leadership and in our families, we've got to think right about everything in our life. And
you said it's easy, obviously, to think the same, or even in your example of the food, going buying the prepackaged or whatever. I mean, one of the most common things in church world is looking at what somebody else is doing and just doing that, maybe with a tweak here or there. Yeah. How does this apply to that? Like, what would you say?
It's so funny because I think one of the biggest misconceptions today, we confuse creative and innovation. We take somebody's idea and make it different. We said we're innovators. No, you're just creative. You're putting a creative spin or a twist on something that already exists. Innovation is to make something that doesn't exist. Dan Scott's writing a new book, and he sent me the manuscript yesterday to write some stuff. And man, I'm telling you, Nick, I don't know if you've gotten a hold of that yet, but it's going to be one of the best books on pre-youth ministry, and it's going to bless a lot of people. And what a lot of people don't realize is, I'm kind of the first guy who saw a need to do pre-youth ministry. And at 1978, I was looking at some statistics, and I was in the state of Mississippi where my first church was, and it said that Mississippi led the nation in unwed pregnancies under 13. And so I just started asking around, and I found out that there were 4 girls pregnant in the 6th grade in the elementary school closest to my church. And so I saw a need that, we needed something for older kids to be able to talk to them about relationships and right thinking and prepare them for the youth group that we couldn't do on Sunday morning in our regular children's church. And so I started doing pre-youth ministry in 1978. And I was telling Dan, I said, man, I wish there was something like this, but you had to create stuff. Everything that I was doing in the 70s, if you had $1 million budget, you couldn't have bought anything because nothing existed. There were no praise and worship music. That was nothing. And, and it's one of those things that why are people not saying what needs to be invented to be able to meet needs we see in church now, rather than what's out there I can buy, or what's out there I can get from somebody else and tweak it another way. And I just think that for us to be the innovators that God wants us to be, we've got to think different about everything. And
how do you? What would be the step there? Because I imagine, I'm just thinking in my head all these situations or questions that come up. Because I think, well, let me ask this first. Do you think the barrier is more that people aren't wired that way, or is it more just they don't spend the time? So busy with this and that.
Who do you know besides me and a few other guys that make appointments to think?
Yeah, not many, but the ones I hear of are, I mean, like, it's people who could be busy, and you're busy. Like, if people knew what your schedule was like, you'd think you don't have time to think about anything. But I think of Carrie Newhoff, or Carrie, that. And the people I hear of, it's like they're busier than I am, so obviously it's important.
Yeah,
but I don't hear a lot of this.
In my book, Beat the Clock, we talk about the number one thing that you've got to do if you want to make time for something is just make an appointment. And, I've been encouraging you to write and wanting you to put some things down because I think there's so many books in you. And I've been telling you, Nick, just make an appointment to write. And that's what I do. I write. I write on Mondays and Fridays, and I have an appointment, and I do it. And people call and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I already have an appointment." I have appointments. I make an appointment to date my wife every 5 years. I take her on a big trip. We'll be married 40 years this year and 2018. And so we're going to Alaska. And I've been planning that and going on a cruise. That's what old people do. They cruise to Alaska. And so it's kind of fun. But, you just make appointments. I make appointments. My oldest grandson's turning 7. And so he is a hot dog eater. That boy loves hot dogs. And so we had this new restaurant open up in the borough. It's a chain from California, and I've eaten at them in California when I'm out there. And the Dog House. And so I made an appointment to take my grandson to lunch. And if people would start using appointments for the things they really want to do, whether it be doing something creative, spending time with your family, even spending time with the Lord. But I even do that to think and says, okay, I'm just going to clear my mind. And I just want the Lord to show me some things that need to be done different. And, it's amazing. There's some apps that need to be developed. I was meeting with some younger guys this week, and we're looking at developing some apps that need to be developed to get things done, and delivery systems. And, I don't know why our churches think, we live in such a fast-paced thinking world, while we think that church just slows down and does the same stuff all the time. And so, we still want to get people to a monthly meeting rather than look for ways to get information to them directly while they're on the treadmill, or different ways to communicate. And so I just think if we want different results, we've got to start thinking different.
So if we did make the time, which that is a big enough challenge right there, certainly I don't know a lot of people that schedule thinking time. But if we do, what's after that? How do we start to think differently?
Well, the main thing is putting a plan in order. And if you've read Beat the Clock, you know that there's a planning stage, there's a preparation stage, there's an evaluation stage, and then there's a delegation stage. And a lot of calendar keepers, and me and you've taught this together, they just live in the planning world. But where preparation comes in is where you start actually doing to-dos. I like to say it this way: if the steps of the righteous are ordered of the Lord, then why do we think in leaps and jumps? If God directs my steps, why aren't I thinking steps? And a lot of people think you need an answer to a problem or a situation that's happening at church. No, you just need the first step. And the main thing is to sit down and start dividing it up into steps. And I've used this illustration before. It's kind of funny. AAA and how I use it has really changed. When I was younger, I changed my own tire. And we only joined AAA to get these little maps they had, and they would take a trip and divide it into like 36 pieces. So they gave you these little trip kits, and boy, you felt really good when you were on page 30. You were almost there. And it's just the opposite now. I let AAA come and change my tire, and I bring my own app on my iPhone 10. And, I don't want their app. I have Siri. But it's just crazy to me how we don't break things down in steps. And looking at those breaking things down in steps is the missing link to getting stuff done on your calendar. And, what needs to be done today so that I can move forward on this project, just take another step. You don't have to do the whole project, Dave. Let's take a step.
And even the evaluation part is a way to think differently, because then you can think differently about what you just did, right? Like
or
past that and go to the next
or
thing.
Looking at tomorrow. I evaluate today and there's things I didn't get to. Well, the question is, am I even the person to do that? Do I need to just send that on to somebody else? Or do we even need to, do we really need to do that? I know for me, a thinking change came years ago when I realized my to-do list for Monday was really the to-do list for the whole week.
Yeah. Most of us are probably that way, right?
Yeah. My daddy, I don't know what this means, but my daddy always said it. He said, don't let your alligator mouth override your hummingbird butt. And I don't really know what that means, but we always want to say more and do more than we really can handle. That's
awesome.
Yeah, and I had to get that in just for you.
Oh, yeah, it's just fun. I love all the sayings. I'll never forget, I think the first thing I ever heard you say, which if people have heard it before, was just the idea if you're how you're going to eat an elephant or something, like cut it up one part at a time or something like that. Yeah. The joy that I had was watching all the faces of the people who were a little bit
Yeah. I remember I did it at one conference, and I actually cranked a chainsaw and
there you go.
Talked about how to move something big, and because nobody starts out. Nobody, starts out burning out. You burn out because you're overwhelmed for long periods of time, and making a place to rethink certain projects or think. I'll make appointments just to think about certain projects, and sometimes I realize that, hey, I don't need to work on this. I need to work on breaking it into smaller parts rather than actually pulling it off. And so the whole thinking process is, it's amazing how we think that we can do what we've always done and get a different result. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line to thinking is, you can't get new results doing old stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in church world, that's like the old wineskins, new wineskins terminology, right? Like, what's the new thing?
One of the things that I learned years ago was, if you'll do when you're small what you'd be forced to do when you're bigger, you'll get bigger. And, you have to ask yourself, how do other people do stuff? Why do they do it the way that they do? What is the result they're trying to do? Is that going to help me where I am to be able to do that? And I just don't think we dissect or think about our plans and push back on it. And again, it's important. You got to rethink stuff.
Yeah, and I've used that quote of yours. If you'll do when you're small what you would have to do when you're big, you'll grow big. With so many people and so many situations. But that is basically an example of how to think different. Like, how would you think if you were double the size?
Yeah,
yeah. Like, that's one example.
Double's good, and you want to double. And, it was just one of those things. It's just like in recruiting. I have people recruiting all the time. But I'll say, have you ever sat down and made a list of every place you could use a worker? If people were no problem, well, they are a problem. Well, let's just pretend they aren't. Yeah. And, let's come up and think about where could we use somebody. And then the next step is don't look at it as it all has to be different people. Nick, there's stuff that happens every week at church. People that are done with praise and worship, they can check name badges on the way out because the two things aren't being done at the same time. And so look for ways to use more than one worker for more than one thing. And so many times we just think how we've always thought rather than getting somebody to push back. And, you know, I have some wonderful leaders and people in my life that allow me to call them and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And they know they have permission to say, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, Jim. And, you know, it's just one of those things that you've got to have some people. You know, there's a term that I learned at Church on the Move when we were going to say something just really crazy. We'd always go, umbrella of mercy. And we'd throw out the umbrella of mercy and then say something crazy, and people knew not to talk ugly about you when you said umbrella of mercy. But we just
Reggie's phrase for that is no tweet zone, right?
Yeah,
like don't tweet what I'm about to tell you.
No, there's certain times, that's not new ways to do things. That's just how I really feel about stuff. And I have to tell you.
That's true. That's good. So what about, because I think another way this shows up is, one, the big thing is we don't make time for it. So we don't think and do things different, just do it the way we've always done it. But obviously you're a big fan of leaders going to conferences and learning, even when you're learning from another church. You've taught so many people how you've done things. What is the approach then from there? Is it just as simple as take what you've learned and then think about it before you just copy paste? You know,
I do love conferences. Orange Conference is my absolute favorite. I love Orange Tour, but I also have the conference within the conference. And you know about this, that I take every one of my breakfasts, every one of my lunches, in between sessions. You know, I'll call people, you know, and, you know, me and you hung out before the thing even started. And, I like to, there are certain things I want to know if the conference is about that or not. And so there's young leaders, there's people I try to connect with. And, sometimes it's as easy as, just looking at the speakers who are going to be there and then tweeting out who's coming. And then I'm able to find out who I can connect with to learn what they know and do what they're doing. And it's crazy. I had a guy today, this little guy that I met at Next, and he sent me a job description and org chart. Have you ever heard of a ping board?
No. What is it called?
Ping board. Pingboard.
Okay. I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So tell me what it is.
He made the coolest org chart. You know, I've been a big fan of org charts, and I was telling him go on PowerPoint and use that little thing. And he said, oh, I made this one on Ping Chart. And not only, you know, if you click on it, it tells how many people they're under, and even when it's not a PDF, you can have their contact information and all kinds of stuff. And it was kind of like a org chart for this century. And you know, one of the coolest things that I heard of, and this guy was calling to pick my brain about something, and I came out of the whole thing with 3 brand new things I didn't know about. Mm-hmm. And so that's the whole idea of find people who inspire you. I know when you and I did that workshop together last year, there's 2 or 3 folks, younger folks that I hang out with, that I got to research time-saving apps. And, you know, Corey Jones, I don't know what I'd do without him in my life.
I know.
I call him, you know, almost weekly and say, hey, I've been thinking about this. What do you think about this? And you just need those people in your life that cause you to think different and to push back. And, it's important that once you get an idea, you run it by folks, but you also see what the Word says about that idea. And that's been one of the great things for me, is just looking at how many wrong informations that we hold on to in children's ministry that's doesn't line up with what God's Word says. And it's important. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Well, then, when have you made a thinking break to just kind of write down what you're thinking and compare it to that list? Mm-hmm. And, it's just important that we do that on a regular basis.
So what about, I know one of the things you've talked about or focused on is faulty thinking. And I think of a classic one in this vein would be, we've always done it this way. So again, you're not thinking, you're just, it's just repeating or whatever. What are some examples of that? How can we fight that?
Well, I know at the last church I was on staff at, the pastor and I came up with a rule that if you do something for the first time, you can do it one other time, but to do it twice or to do it that third time, you have to get in a room of creative thinkers. And we say, is there a better way for a better outcome to get better results? Pastor Willie used to say it this way: it doesn't take leadership to stop something that's not working. It takes leadership to take something that's working and make it even better. And, the Jim Collins good to great idea, we're happy with good when we really need to, we'll let you repeat the thing one other time, but to pull it off again, it's got to be approved by some critical thinkers, that is there a better way to change that?
Yeah. And there's probably, I would think in ministry world, I know I've faced this, so I'm assuming others have as well, where you'll do the thing you've already done because you know how to do it. I don't want to say it's lazy. It's because we're busy. It's not because we're lazy, but it's because you're busy and you don't want to spend the time to think of a new way or a better way. You just run
right on the heels. I've said this before. Church people don't know how to celebrate each other or stuff or wins. Mm-hmm. We're so worried about beating, next year, doing bigger and better, that we don't even celebrate what God did this time. But as soon as the wins are over, let's work on next year's file. I know I sat with, I'm at a really interesting place in my life where I have church keys at a church I don't attend. I get to use their building when I coach. And I'm starting to attend staff meeting at a church I'm not on staff. And who would have thought those things would have been happening in my life? But, it's when we had our 4th birthday celebration at my church, and we originally let's work on next year's file right now while it's fresh. We need to move the birthday to a weekend rather than a Tuesday night because our service times are Tuesdays and Sundays. And so we need to do it on a Sunday. We need to provide children's ministry at the venue that we do it. And, I told my pastors, I can help you come up with this because we, when I was at World Outreach, we used to do Easter at the college. So I know how to go off site somewhere and make church out of dance studios and gyms, all kind of other things. And so, but we don't tweak it while it's fresh. And that's another good thing to look at things. We realized we did a church-wide Daniel fast, and we were fasting during the Super Bowl. So no chicken wings for you.
Great planning there.
Yeah. Just eat your vegetable. And, and so it was one of those things that we notes to self next year, be done and break the fast on Super Bowl. And you a lot more people participate in it. And so, it's just, we don't rethink. It's not that we don't always take time to think on the front end, but after something's over, we need to rethink it. Mm-hmm. What did we learn? What could we do better? How can we tweak it? How can we get a better return? Is there a better way to do that?
That right there, honestly, I don't know, maybe you would agree or disagree. Churches that do that one thing really well, I find is the common denominator of churches that do really well, is they evaluate everything.
Yeah, and you have to. And Nick, every day I don't hop on the scale, I gain weight. The days that I hop on the scale and write down what I eat are better days for me physically than if I just, get all 21 again and just don't pay any attention. And so that evaluation and start next year's file. And then when you pull out next year's file a few months before the event, you realize, man, it's almost done.
Yeah. Yep. That is a good feeling too. You don't have to prepare as much because you did that work on the front end and before, and you evaluated and all that stuff. That's true.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And I'm a little heavy on the time management thing. My to-do list, I even remind my kids when it's time to change the filters at their house. I have a recurring thing every 6 months and that comes up and those kind of things. But the same thing with making appointments. And I'm not – and what would happen if you just made 4 appointments a year to spend 30 minutes thinking new thoughts and then make another thing to make another appointment maybe 3 times a year to put a group of people together and kind of actually put some feet to those thoughts that came out of your thinking sessions. And but it's, with my grandkids, here's another one I've rethought. I've got to I got a second chance on parenting. And, I think I did okay the first time. Nancy loves Jesus with all her heart. So does Whitney. But, I close my laptop so much quicker with these two. I decided every time my grandboys come over, I start our time together with prayer. I end it with prayer, not just kisses, but when G kisses you, we just say a quick little prayer. And I am in while they are there, and we focus on stuff. And we were playing the other day, and Sparrow said, man, I want to win. Why did Gigi win? We were playing the board game. And I just said, that reminds me of a scripture. And I pulled out a scripture about rejoice with those that rejoice. And I said, just like you don't like losing right now, I'm going to put my arm around you and tell you it's okay. You just keep playing, have a good attitude, you'll win next time. And just look for those times to make things, intentional. And I think that I've done the same thing with dating my wife, with spending time with her, encouraging her. I'm rethinking how we're turning off the television, spending more time rocking it old school, talking to one another. And, I was posting something one time on social media and I realized my wife liked it. She was sitting next to me. And I said, this is nuts. Down, I'm gonna call it.
Yeah,
and,
like direct message each other or something.
Yeah,
she's right there. Yep. So we can look forward to, hopefully it's okay for me to say this.
Yeah.
Coming out on this, right? You're going to put
this fall, looks like this fall. I'm speaking at a couple of conferences in the fall. So I've already said that the book's going to be done. So that makes me write a whole lot faster.
You got a deadline now. You're going to work on some this coming week, right? That's great.
So I fly out Tuesday, and I'm having some. Did I tell you I went to a iPad Pro?
No. You like it?
Oh man,
oh yeah,
I just love
Stylus,
it.
the whole deal. Like, do you use that too?
Oh yeah, I've got the whole. You know me. I bought everything they make for it, and I got the attachment that kisses me goodnight and those electronic lips and all kinds of stuff. But it is so cool because I can access my desktop from the iPad Pro, and so it's just another device that knows where I am on the writing thing, and so it's been really cool. It has better battery, so I'm gonna use it on a long flight. But it's just even that I've been using a laptop for so long, and there's so many advantages. The minute I get on an airplane, I can start working with the iPad Pro. I can read books. I can do all these different things that I couldn't do with a laptop. And and if we'll take some time to just rethink our habits and why we do things and do things for the right reasons. And the main reason is we want a different outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, and sometimes if you don't take the time to think, you don't even realize there could be a different outcome. It's kind of like your example earlier, where if you've done it twice, take some time to see if you could do it better. You may not even realize you could do it better until you put in some thinking time. Yeah,
I brought JC and Corey and Corey's wife in. Spend the last bit of December with me. And I just had them push back on my thinking and made me, as I'm rebranding and refocusing in on some other things, I just wanted a different opinion. And I think that coming up with people in your life that love you, and that will speak into you and help you push through new ideas. And, there's so many great thinkers out there. And I don't know anybody that if you don't drink coffee, so I can't buy you coffees. But I have bought you water while I drink coffee in the coffee shop. And the thing of it is we just need to include other people in our life and get some different opinions. And the great thing that comes out of is a whole new perspective for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of goes back to like the conference you mentioned, connecting with other people, learning from them. That is my favorite part of any conference. You know what I mean?
And it's so so many people say, where did you learn, where did you learn that? In my coaching groups, I'll always say, here were my takeaways from the conference. And they said, well, I didn't hear that. I said, oh, that was 3 of us eating lunch in the corner. Sorry. And they're just as big, they're just as big as what happens on the main stage.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll look forward to that book. You got a deadline now. You got a hit. So.
Yeah, fall, baby, fall.
But you got a lot of time between now and then. And you knock that stuff out fast. So I think
you just make it a point. You make it.
That's right.
Create it.
Keep showing up for it. Protect it. How can people connect with you? I think always can go to JimWideman.com.
At Jim Wideman, if they, I'm not so fun to see. I get tickled. People that follow me on Instagram know I like coffee. I like guitars. I like exit row seats. and I like my.
Yeah, it's true.
That's probably the only 4 pictures.
That's 90% of your Instagram right there.
Yeah, that's pretty sums up my Instagram. So I had Jim Wideman there as well as on the Twitters, and then Facebook is a hot mess. I don't know how you feel about Facebook, but the bad thing about working in big churches is you can fill Facebook up in a hurry. So, you've got all these people that send me a friend request, although my Facebook page says I can't have any more friends. Facebook's mean, so.
Facebook's mean.
I have this other page, Jim Wideman Ministries, that you can like me. People would rather be a friend than like you. I personally don't have any friends I don't like, and so
so why not like the page? But of course, the other part of the page of Facebook that's messy is they only show your content to like 10% of the people or whatever, right?
Or whatever.
Let's start paying money.
I can't spell algorithm, so I don't use it in a sentence, and so
you don't want to know what it is, yeah.
That's
awesome.
I don't eat anything, go to a country, or use a word in a sentence that I can't spell. And
good philosophy.
Yeah, and when you're from Alabama and went to college in Mississippi, you're educationally challenged anyway.
So it's a limited list.
Yeah, it's a limited
words and things and places you eat. So Next Gen Staff Solutions is nextgenstaffsolutions.com.
Great job. They can go to Next Gen Staff Solutions. Check out the job board. You can email me. The phone number there rings my cell phone and Matt McKee's cell phone, and we'd love to serve you and help you there. And that's pretty much how to get in touch with me.
Cool, man. Jim, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Nick. I always love to be on everything you're on, but more than that, I just like to hang out with you. And
same here, man.
Thankful for your friendship, and love watching your kids getting bigger.
Oh, yeah, that's happening too fast, too. But I can't wait to see you again. I guess it'll be Orange Conference. I'm thinking next time I'll see you in person, so that'll be fun.
Be good. Or party.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Thank y'all so much.
Jim is awesome. Such a humble guy, so wise, and his influence in the church world and family ministry specifically is just immeasurable. I mean, it's just been tremendous over the decades, over the years. And I personally am so grateful for his friendship and his wisdom. As we talked about this topic, here are some action items I thought about. One is to do what we talked about, to schedule some time to think. Just schedule some thinking time, evaluate, think about how you might do something differently. How could it be improved? Would you stop doing it? What does that look like? Another action item would be to schedule time to think with others. Like Jim mentioned, who are some leaders, older than you, younger than you, different than you, and discuss and learn from them. And then another action item would be to evaluate everything you do in light of that example he gave about how if you did something twice, then if you're going to do it a third time, you had to get input from someone else. You had to really evaluate, is this a good idea, but is it also the best way to do it? How we've done it, is that the best way to approach it this third time? So those are 3 action items that you can take to see if you can start thinking differently. But I think the biggest thing is to make time for it. I don't know about you, but as he talked through that, I thought that's definitely the biggest barrier for me. I don't think it's that I can't think differently or don't enjoy thinking differently. For me personally, it's really just making sure I make the time. Again, you can get all the show notes and links at nickblevins.com/episode 93. We talked about how you can find everything at jimwideman.com. And if you are looking to hire a children's pastor, student pastor, next gen pastor, something in that realm, I would absolutely contact Jim at Next Gen Staff Solutions and see if he could help you. If nothing else, you could do the thing he was talking about and put the job on the job board and all of that. So loved having Jim on the podcast. I hope it was helpful for you. It certainly was fun for me. I got to pick Jim's brain for another 30 minutes after the call, and he's just so generous. And I definitely appreciate his time. So I hope it was helpful for you. As usual, I'd love to hear from you. Email me any questions you have or guests you'd like to see or hear from on the podcast. Leave a comment or a rating on iTunes. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. We do this for you, obviously for me too, because I get to benefit a lot from these interviews. I learn a ton every week for sure. But ultimately, I wanted to serve you well. So let me know how I can best do that. Until then, hope you have a great week. Hope you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll catch you in the next episode of the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.